Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. Usually we are zooming out, way out.
Right, like looking at sweeping historical trends or, massive tectonic shifts in the tech industry.
Exactly. We usually try to encompass the whole world in an hour, but today we're doing the exact opposite. We're zooming in.
And I mean microscope level.
Yeah. We are going to spend our time today inside a single room focused on a single hour of television that aired way back in 2010.
We are talking about Breaking Bad.
And for you fans listening, you probably already know exactly where we are going with this. We aren't talking about the train heist.
No.
We aren't talking about the explosive finale. We are talking about Season 3, Episode 10, the episode titled simply Fly.
Fly. One word, one room, two guys, and a bug.
It is arguably the most polarizing hour of television in the modern era. I mean, you mentioned this episode to a Breaking Bad fan, and you get one of two reactions.
Always. They either groan, roll their eyes, and say, oh, the bottle episode where nothing happens.
Or they get this intense look in their eyes and tell you it's a masterpiece of psychological horror.
It really is the Marmite of television episodes. You love it or you hate it. There's very little middle ground here.
And what's fascinating is that both sides are kind of right.
They are. On the surface, it is literally 47 minutes of Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul trying to swat a housefly. That is the plot.
Which sounds totally insane when you say it out loud.
Completely insane.
Because this is a show about meth dealers, cartels, decapitated heads on turtles, and high-stakes poker games with the DEA.
Right. And then right in the middle of Season 3, the brakes just screech to a halt.
We watch a guy fall off a ladder trying to catch a bug.
But that screeching halt is exactly why we are here today. Because when you stop the momentum of a thriller, when you strip away the explosions and the villains, you are left with something much scarier.
The human mind.
Exactly. This episode isn't about a fly. It's a masterclass in psychology, a lesson in the brutal economic realities of Hollywood production, and really a visual experiment that pushes the boundaries of what a TV drama can actually do.
So here is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the why and the how.
We're going to look at the financial desperation that forced this episode to exist.
Spoiler alert, they were completely broke.
Totally in the red. We're also going to break down the psychological meltdown of Walter White, which is the actual plot of the hour.
And we're going to explore this massive divide in the audience. Why do critics call this a perfect hour of television, while so many fans list it as the one episode they skip on a rewatch?
And ultimately, we're going to answer the question, is this episode filler? Or is it actually the skeleton key that unlocks the entire series?
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the reality of making television. Because I think as viewers, we assume a show like Breaking Bad, especially by Season 3, just has a blank check.
You would think so.
Yeah.
They were winning Emmys, the ratings were climbing.
Surely Vince Gilligan, the creator, could do whatever he wanted.
The reality is much grittier than that. By the time they reached the production slot for episode 10 of Season 3, the show was, to use Vince Gilligan's own words, hopelessly over budget.
How does a massive hit show like that just run out of money?
Well, think about what they had done in the first 9 episodes of that season. They had intricate action sequences, massive location shoot out in the desert, destroyed vehicles.
Quality costs money.
It does. And they had simply spent their allowance. They were in the red.
So they can't just go to the network and ask for a little more cash.
It really doesn't work like that, even for a huge hit. They had a hard cap. And the source material highlights a really specific, fascinating financial detail that explains exactly why this episode looks the way it does.
Let's hear it.
It comes down to the trucks.
The trucks.
The production convoy. When you shoot on location, say, you want to film a scene at Jesse Pinkman's house, and then a scene out in the desert, you have to move what they call the circus.
Right, the whole fleet.
The camera trucks, the lighting rigs, the makeup trailers, catering, the actors' trailers. It is a massive fleet of vehicles.
It's not just hopping in a minivan. It's a full military-style logistical operation.
Exactly. And the sources note that simply moving that production convoy from one location to another costs between $25,000 and $35,000.
Wait, let me get this straight. That's not paying the actors.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the cost of the film stock or the cameras or lunch. That's just driving.
That is just the relocation fee. The cost of fuel, drivers, permits, and the time lost setting up and tearing down.
Wow.
And they looked at the budget for episode 10 and realized, we literally cannot afford to move the trucks. We do not have the 30 grand.
That is wild. So they were just grounded.
Grounded. They needed a script that took place in a set they already had standing, fully built and fully lit.
The super lab.
Exactly. And they needed it to use as few actors as possible to save on guest star fees.
And that, my friends, is how the bottle episode is born.
Right. Bottle episode is an old industry term. It goes all the way back to the 60s, like the original Star Trek.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When they ran out of money for alien planets, they would write an episode that took place entirely on the Enterprise. They would bottle the cast up in the ship.
It's a cost-saving measure disguised as a creative choice.
Precisely.
But in the case of Fly, it feels like they didn't just accept the bottle, they smashed the bottle over our heads. They leaned into it so hard.
They really did. If you look at the cast list for Fly, it is startlingly stark. Aside from a few extras in the background at the very beginning and end, like the laundry workers.
The only people who speak or have any screen time are Bryan Cranston as Walt and Aaron Paul as Jesse.
That is it.
It's essentially a two-man stage play.
It really is. And there's a funny quirk in the credits that the sources point out. If you watch the opening credits for this episode, you see the names of all the regulars.
Like Dean Norris, who plays Hank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bitsy Brandt, who plays Marie. R.J. Mippy, who plays Walt Jr. They're all listed in the opening text.
But they never actually show up.
They get the credit and likely the paycheck because they are series regulars. But they were told to just stay home.
To save money on hair, makeup, catering, all of it.
Exactly. There is one tiny exception, though. We do hear the voice of Skylar White, played by Anna Gunn.
Right, at the beginning.
But the production notes reveal just how broke they were. They didn't even pay Anna Gunn to come into a recording booth to do those lines.
Really?
No. They reused audio from a Season 2 episode called Phoenix, where she is singing a lullaby. They just recycled the tape.
That is how scrappy this production was.
Very scrappy.
It's amazing to think that one of the greatest television dramas of all time was basically operating like a student film for a week. Like, hey, we have a basement and 2 actors. What can we make?
But that is where the absolute genius of Vince Gilligan comes in.
Yeah.
He didn't see this as just a limitation. He had a whole philosophy about pace.
How so?
He argued that a season of television is like a piece of music. You can't have a guitar solo screaming at you for 13 hours straight.
Right, you get numb to it. If everything is an explosion, then an explosion isn't special anymore.
Precisely. Gilligan said you need the quiet moments to make the high highs pop.
The contrast.
The quiet episodes allow the audience to breathe, and they allow the characters to actually process what has happened to them.
So Fly is the deep breath before the plunge.
It is the pause button, but it's a pause button where the characters are stuck together in a pressure cooker.
So we have the context. We know why they're trapped in the lab. It's basically because the accountant said so.
Yep.
Now, let's get into the story itself. Let's open the door to the super lab and look at what actually happens.
So chronologically, we are right in the middle of Season 3. And to understand Walt's behavior here, you have to look at his medical chart, so to speak.
And we aren't talking about his cancer.
No, we are talking about his sleep.
The insomnia. The episode opens with this tight close-up of a smoke detector. Just that blinking red light. And Walt is just staring at it.
Insomnia is a classic literary device. When a character can't sleep, it means their subconscious is trying to eat them alive.
Their defenses are totally
The
down.
filters are gone. Walt is fraying at the edges.
So he goes down to the lab with Jesse. And right away, there's this tension about the product. And of course, with Walt, it is always about the math.
It is always the math.
Yeah.
Walt has calculated exactly how much meth they should be producing based on the chemical precursors they have in the tanks. And the yield is coming up short.
Not by a massive amount, but enough to be statistically significant for a guy like Walt.
Exactly.
And Jesse tries to just wave it off. He gives us the word of the episode, spillage. He says, oh, it's just spillage. We spilled some, like they're baking cookies and dropped some flour on the floor.
But Walt isn't buying it. And the audience knows Walt is right. We know from previous episodes that Jesse is stealing.
Yeah, he's skimming.
He is skimming small amounts of the surplus meth to sell on the side to recover his own financial losses.
So, right from the jump, you have this incredibly tense dynamic where Walt is paranoid, but his paranoia is actually completely justified.
Yeah.
He's essentially being gaslit by his partner.
Exactly. And in that state of sleep-deprived paranoia, he spots it. The Fly.
Enter the antagonist.
The antagonist. He is all alone in the lab after Jesse leaves for the night. And he sees this common housefly buzzing around.
Now, in a normal context, you swat it or you ignore it. It's a bug.
But to Walt, this lab is his church. It is the one place in his chaotic life where he has total, absolute control. It is sterile. It is perfect.
And the fly represents what? Dirt?
Contamination, that is the word he keeps using over and over, contamination. He convinces himself that if the fly lands on the equipment, the entire batch of meth will be ruined.
Which is scientifically ridiculous, right? I mean, it's a tiny fly. It's not going to ruin 200 pounds of crystal meth.
It is highly dubious science, but it isn't about the chemistry at all. It's about control.
Oh.
Think about his life. Walt has lost control of his family. Skylar wants a divorce. He is losing control of his business because he suspects Jesse is stealing. He can't even control his own brain's ability to sleep.
So the fly is the one thing he thinks he can actually conquer.
Yes, it becomes a massive psychological projection.
And this leads directly to the slapstick portion of the episode. And I think this is where the haters we mentioned really start to check out.
For sure.
Because we see Heisenberg, the danger, the one who knocks, literally making a makeshift fly swatter out of insulation material and running around like a cartoon character.
It is pure slapstick.
Yeah.
And you have to give credit to Rian Johnson, the director of this episode. He leans fully into the absurdity of it.
He shoots it from these really low angles.
He uses wide lenses. There is a shot where Walt falls off the catwalk that looks like something straight out of Wile E. Coyote.
He really hurts himself, too. He falls, hits the metal equipment. It's a brutal drop.
But that physical fall is important structurally. It renders him physically vulnerable to match his mental vulnerability.
Right.
So when Jesse comes in the next morning, he finds Walt bruised, manic, and refusing to cook. Walt has completely shut down the entire multi-million-dollar operation.
He locks them in. It's a full-on lockdown.
He locks Jesse out first. Then Jesse actually has to cut the power to the lab to force his way back in. And then Walt makes a decree. No one leaves until the fly is dead.
It becomes a siege. 2 grown men versus an insect.
And I want to talk about Jesse's reaction here. Because usually, Jesse is the one who is emotional, erratic, the problem child of the duo.
Right. Walt is usually the cold, calculating one.
But here, Jesse steps up. He becomes the adult in the room.
It is a total role reversal.
Jesse sees that Walt is having a legitimate mental breakdown. He doesn't mock him, well, at least not entirely. He tries to actually problem solve.
He suggests they just cook anyway and ignore it.
When that fails, he tries to help catch the fly using flypaper and a ladder. But crucially, he realizes Walt just needs to sleep.
So he glugs him.
He becomes the caretaker. He puts sleeping pills in Walt's coffee. It's a protective act, but it's also a pragmatic way to just shut Walt up so they can get back to work.
And while this is happening, Jesse tells a story that I think is the key to understanding Jesse's perspective on all this. The story about his aunt.
Right, the possum story.
Jesse recounts how his aunt, who died of cancer, started hearing a possum under her house.
She was completely obsessed with catching it, but there was no possum.
The cancer had spread to her brain.
Exactly, and she was having auditory hallucinations.
So Jesse's looking at Walt, who we all know has lung cancer, and he's connecting the dots. He thinks the fly isn't real.
He thinks the cancer has metastasized to Walt's brain.
It adds this incredibly dark layer of tragedy to the slapstick we were just watching.
It does. Jesse looks at Walt and sees a dying man losing his mind. Walt insists he is in remission, that he's completely fine. But the seed of doubt is planted for the viewer.
It reframes the whole episode. Are we watching a dark comedy about a bug, or are we watching the tragic final decline of a man's cognitive faculties?
And as those sleeping pills that Jesse slipped him start to really take effect, the energy of the episode shifts entirely.
They're running around stop.
The frantic energy dissipates, and we enter what I think is the real heart of Fly.
This is section 3 in our breakdown, the emotional core. And this is where the writing just absolutely shines.
Walt becomes loose. He becomes very talkative. And he starts a monologue that is arguably the most important look into his soul we ever get in the entire series.
He talks about death, but it's weirdly specific. He isn't saying, I don't want to die. He's essentially saying, I live too long.
He is obsessed with the timing of his death.
Yep.
He treats his life like a mathematical graph, like a stock market chart. He is looking for the peak, the perfect moment.
He's trying to solve the equation of his own life.
Yes.
He says there was a moment where he had made enough money to leave his family secure, his baby daughter was born, but before the really bad stuff happened.
Before Skylar found out about the drugs, before he became the villain in his own home, he says, I missed it. He missed his exit ramp.
And he pinpoints the exact night. And this is where the hair on the back of my neck stood up watching it. He lands on the night Jane Margolis died.
This is the elephant in the room, the ghost in the machine for this whole episode.
For listeners who might be fuzzy on season 2, let's recap Jane.
Jane was Jesse's girlfriend. They were in love. They were planning to run away to New Zealand with Jesse's drug money.
She was a recovering addict who relapsed because of Jesse.
And one night, she overdosed in her sleep. She choked.
And Walt was there.
Walt broke into the apartment to talk to Jesse. He saw Jane start to choke. He rushed to the bed to help her, and then he stopped.
He let her die.
He watched her die because she was a threat to him. She knew too much, she was blackmailing him, and she was taking Jesse away.
It is the moment Walt went from desperate guy breaking the law to feed his family to an absolute monster.
Yes.
And here he is, stoned on sleeping pills, sitting on the floor of the lab with Jesse, the man who loved her, talking about that exact night.
And he drops a bombshell of a detail that Jesse doesn't know. He tells Jesse that earlier that same night, before he went to their apartment, he stopped at a bar for a drink.
And he met a man, a complete stranger.
They sat and had a beer. They talked about water on Mars. They talked about raising daughters.
And that man was Donald Margolis, Jane's father.
The father of the girl Walt would watch die just 2 hours later.
Walt is obsessed with the odds of that meeting. He's a scientist. He believes in probability and logic, and he cannot make the math work.
He tries to calculate it right there on the floor. He says the universe is random, it's chaos, it's just subatomic particles colliding.
But the odds of meeting that specific man in a city the size of Albuquerque on that specific night, he calls it astronomical.
It breaks his worldview.
It really does.
Walt wants to believe the universe is a cold, unfeeling machine. Because if the universe is just a machine, then there is no morality. There is no ultimate judgment for what he did to Jane.
But this coincidence, it feels like fate. It feels like God put him in that bar to warn him or to judge him.
He says something like, the universe is screaming at you.
Exactly. And the fly represents that screaming. The fly is the chaos he can't control. It's the physical reminder that no matter how much he calculates, he is trapped in a moral web he can't escape.
And as he is rambling about this, the tension is just skyrocketing. Jesse is up on the ladder trying to get the fly. Walt is on the ground getting sleepier and sleepier. And he starts apologizing.
He says, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about Jane.
Every viewer at home is holding their breath. Because if he says, I watched her die, it's over. The show is over.
Yeah.
Jesse kills him right there with the ladder.
It is the ultimate tease. We're teetering right on the edge of the precipice. Walt is murmuring. His subconscious is leaking out. He is inches away from confessing his darkest sin.
And then
The moment snaps. Jesse sees the fly.
the tension completely breaks.
Jesse swings. He swats the fly against the ceiling light. A direct hit.
The physical antagonist is dead.
Just like that.
Jesse climbs down the ladder, holding the dead bug like a trophy. He shows it to Walt. Look, I got it.
And the window for confession abruptly closes. Walt looks at the bug and he whispers, it's all contaminated. And then he passes out.
It's a brilliant narrative move by the writers. The resolution of the physical plot, killing the fly, actually prevents the resolution of the emotional plot, which would be the confession.
The violence saves Walt from having to tell the truth.
Exactly.
So the siege finally ends. The next morning they clean up, they cook the batch, the yield is good, and Jesse drives Walt home.
And there is this quiet moment in the car where you think, okay, they've bonded, they went through the trenches together, they understand each other better now.
You really want to believe that. Jesse is being so gentle with him, he drops Walt off at his house. But then Walt turns to him, and the mask is back on.
Heisenberg returns.
Walt warns him point blank. He says, if you are stealing, I can't protect you.
I can't protect you. That is so heavy. He's basically saying, I know exactly what you're doing, and if our boss Gus finds out, you're on your own.
It destroys the intimacy of the previous 40 minutes in an instant. It reminds us that these two are not friends. They are accomplices.
And there is zero trust. Walt knows Jesse is stealing. Jesse knows Walt is hiding things. They are locked in a death spiral.
Jesse pushes back, though. He says, I'm not asking for your protection.
Which is a complete lie, because he definitely needs it. But he's asserting his independence. He's putting his own armor back on.
And then we get the final shot of the episode. Walt is back in his house. He's in his own bed. He's trying to sleep.
And the camera pans up, slowly, to the smoke detector.
And we hear it. Bzzzt.
The fly? It's
I
back.
have a different fly. But it lands right on the blinking light.
So what are we supposed to take from that ending? Was the whole episode for nothing? They didn't even kill the right fly.
I think the expert interpretation here is purely symbolic. If the fly represents contamination, if it represents guilt or the rot inside Walt's soul, then the ending is telling us that you can't kill it with a fly swatter.
You can scrub the lab, but you can't clean your soul.
Precisely. The contamination is internal. Walt is a contaminant. As long as he's alive, the buzzing will continue.
That is incredibly dark. But it fits perfectly with the overarching theme of the show.
Now, we've unpacked the plot, we've unpacked the production history. I want to spend this last segment talking about the reaction, because as we said at the start, this episode is a battlefield.
Marmite episode.
Let's talk about the people who love it first. The critics seem to really rally behind this one.
Critics usually love bottle episodes because they strip away the spectacle and force a focus on pure acting. If you are a TV critic, you want to see Bryan Cranston act. You don't just want to see him walk away from a cool explosion.
Who are the big champions of Fly?
Well, Donna Bowman at the AV Club gave it an A immediately upon airing. She praised the visual risk-taking. As we mentioned, Rian Johnson did some crazy stuff with the camera.
Yeah, the scrub brush POV.
He attached a camera right to a scrub brush, so we got the point of view of the floor being scrubbed. He used extreme wide angles that made the lab look miles long and totally isolating.
It felt disorienting, nauseating almost.
Which was the point. Matt Zoller Seitz, writing for Vulture, went even further. Years later, in 2013, he named Fly the single greatest episode of the entire series.
Wow. Better than Ozymandias. Better than the pilot.
He called it a perfect hour of television. He compared it to Pine Barrens from The Sopranos.
Oh, that's a huge compliment.
It is. Pine Barrens is another famous episode where two gangsters get lost in the woods and essentially nothing happens. The argument is that these episodes force the characters to stop running from their problems and look in the mirror.
So the lovers say it's high art, it's Beckett, it's Waiting for Godot set in a meth lab. But the haters, they have a very different take.
They do. And honestly, their frustration is completely understandable. If you tune in to Breaking Bad for the plot, the cat and mouse game with Gus Fring, the tension with the DEA closing in, then Fly is a massive speed bump. It stops the story dead in its tracks.
Right. Tasha Robinson, also from the AV Club, so even the same publication was divided. She completely hated it.
She argued that it made Walt look stupid. She said, seeing the great mastermind Heisenberg falling off a catwalk and obsessing over a tiny bug was petty to the point of rank stupidity. She felt it betrayed the character's established competence.
I get that. You spend 3 seasons building this guy up as a tactical genius, and then he spends an hour acting like a fool.
Collider recently called it the most polarizing episode, and noted that many fans consider it highly skippable.
Skippable?
Yeah. They argue that because the fly is dead at the end and the status quo is essentially reset, you can skip episode 10, go straight to episode 11, and miss absolutely nothing of the plot. Business Insider in 2019 even labeled it the most hated episode.
That is the big question, isn't it? Is it filler? If I'm telling a friend to watch the show for the first time, do I tell them to skip Fly?
I would argue it is the least skippable episode of the entire show.
What?
Because if you skip Fly, you miss the emotional explanation for everything that happens afterwards. You miss seeing the massive crack in the armor. If you don't see Walt's crushing guilt here, his actions in the season 3 finale, which are incredibly violent and desperate, seem sudden.
They come out of nowhere without this setup.
Exactly. Fly shows us that he is a man on the verge of a total psychotic break.
It's the structural load-bearing wall. It doesn't look pretty, maybe, but it holds the whole roof up.
Yes. And it forces the viewer to sit in the discomfort. We are so used to TV moving fast, giving us constant dopamine hits. This episode demands patience. It traps you in the room with them. You feel the claustrophobia. You feel the profound annoyance. That isn't bad writing. That is the exact intended effect.
So we have an episode that was born out of literal poverty. They literally couldn't afford to move the trucks. And it resulted in an abundance of character depth.
It proves that limitations breed true creativity. If they had $1 million more in the budget, we might have gotten a generic cartel shootout. Instead, we got a terrifying glimpse into the abyss of Walt's mind.
I want to circle back to that final image for our closing thought. The fly returning.
The buzzing in the dark.
Walt hears it, but this time he doesn't get up. He doesn't grab the makeshift swatter. He just lies there.
He closes his eyes.
Here is my question for you and for the listener. Think about this. If the fly represents the contamination of his soul, and he decides to just ignore it and go to sleep, does that mean he has accepted the contamination?
That is the terrifying implication.
Is Fly the exact moment where Walter White finally kills off the very last remnant of his conscience? Not by swatting it, but by simply learning to live with the noise. By learning to sleep soundly, even while the guilt is buzzing right above his head.
I think that is exactly what it is. He realizes he is a monster, and he decides he can comfortably live with that. He chooses the sleep over the cleansing.
It's a chilling thought, and it totally changes how you see everything that comes after. He isn't fighting for his soul anymore. He's just fighting to survive.
He surrendered to the fly.
Well, on that cheerful note, next time you hear a buzzing in your room in the middle of the night, maybe ask yourself what you're feeling guilty about, or, just buy a better fly swatter.
Or just go to sleep.
Thank you so much for listening to this deep dive into Breaking Bad's Fly. It's been a truly fascinating trip into the lab.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time. Stay contamination-free, everyone.